Hello guys, welcome back. We do breathe in and out very easily and without any effort of ours for about 16 to 20 times per minute. But do you know how many organs or muscles or different mechanisms that are involved in each breath that we take or we leave? So why waiting? Let's get into the topic. Today's lesson is about the anatomy and physiology of respiratory system. Anatomically, the respiratory system is divided into two parts. The upper respiratory tract, which involves nose, pharynx, larynx and trachea, whereas the lower respiratory tract that involves lungs and the bronchi. The upper respiratory tract filters and humidifies and warms up the inspired air, whereas the lower respiratory tract accomplishes in gaseous exchange. As the air passes through the nose, it comes into contact with a large surface of moist, warm, and highly vascular ciliated mucous membranes. This mucous membrane traps the dust and organisms in the inhaled air. This filtered air is then warmed to body temperature and brought into contact with sensitive nerves. Some of these nerves detect the odors that we smell, and other provoke sneezing to expel an irritating dust. There are mucus secreting cells called goblet cells that lines the nose and the nasal cavity. These goblet cells continuously secrete mucus to keep the nose moist. There are 4 pairs of bony cavities that are lined with the nasal mucosa. These are called paranasal sinuses. These paranasal sinuses are named according to their location, like frontal, ethmoid, sphenoid, and maxillary. The prominent function of the paranasal sinuses is to serve as a resonating chamber in speech. So that's why maybe when we get cold or when these sinuses gets blocked, our voice gets changed. This inspired air, which is filtered, humidified in the nose, enters into the pharynx. This pharynx or throat is a tube-like structure that connects the nasal and oral cavities. This pharynx is divided into oropharynx, nasopharynx, and laryngopharynx. The nasopharynx is located posterior to the nose and above the soft palate. The part of the pharynx that gets connected to the oral cavity is oropharynx, and the part of the pharynx that continues with larynx is laryngopharynx. The structures like tonsils, adenoids, and other lymph tissue encircle the throat. These structures guards the body from invasion by organisms entering the nose and the throat. This pharynx also acts as a functions as a passageway for the respiratory and digestive tracts. The leaf-like structure called epiglottis forms the entrance to the larynx. This epiglottis gets closed while swallowing so that food particles will not get enters into the larynx. In case any foreign particle or food particle gets entered into the larynx, it is expelled out with the coughing reflex. The larynx or voice box is a cartilaginous epithelium lined structure that connects the pharynx and the trachea. The major function of the larynx is voice production. The larynx has the following structures. Glottis. This is the opening between the vocal cords in the larynx. The larynx also has three cartilaginous structures called thyroid, cricoid, and arytenoid cartilage. Thyroid cartilage is the largest of all the cartilages and it forms the Adam's apple. Cricoid cartilage. This is the only complete cartilaginous ring in the larynx. The only cartilage used in vocal cord movement with the thyroid cartilage is arytenoid cartilage. This larynx leads to a pipe-like structure called trachea. Trachea is composed of smooth muscle with C-shaped rings of cartilage at regular intervals. These cartilaginous rings are incomplete on the posterior surface and gives firmness to the wall of the trachea. It also prevents it from collapsing. This smooth muscle is composed of certain autonomous nerves, which has both sympathetic and parasympathetic nerves. These sympathetic nerves releases muscarinic receptors when we do certain activities like extreme exercises that exerts our body. At that time, these beta-adrenergic receptors that are released increases the diameter of the trachea, allowing the more air to pass through, providing adequate oxygen to the body. Whereas the parasympathetic nerves releases beta-adrenergic receptors during the resting phase of ours. Coming to the lower respiratory tract. This lower respiratory tract consists of the lungs, which contain the bronchial and alveolar structures needed for gaseous exchange. These lungs are paired elastic structures enclosed in the thoracic cavity. Each lung is further divided into lobes. The right lung has three lobes, namely upper, middle, and lower lobes, whereas the left lung has only two lobes, the upper and the lower lobes. Each lobe is further divided into 2 or 5 segments separated by fissures, which are extensions of the pleura. The lungs and all of the thorax are lined with the serous membrane called the pleura. The visceral pleura covers the lungs and the parietal pleura lines the thorax. The visceral and parietal pleura and the small amount of pleural fluid between these two membranes serve to lubricate the thorax and lungs and permit smooth motion of the lung. The trachea bifurcates into two, entering into the two lungs. There are several divisions of the bronchi within each lobe of the lung. First are the lobar bronchi. These lobar bronchi are 3 in the right lung and 2 in the left lung. These lobar bronchi are further divided into segmental and subsegmental bronchi. These bronchi are surrounded by connective tissue that contains arteries, lymphatics, and nerves. These subsegmental bronchi then branches into the bronchioles. The bronchioles contain submucosal glands which produce mucus that covers the inside lining of the airways. The bronchi and bronchioles are also lined with cells that have surface covered with cilia. These cilia create a constant whipping motion that propels mucus and foreign substances away from the lungs towards the larynx. The bronchioles then branch into terminal bronchioles, which are completely different from the other bronchioles. They do not have either mucus glands or cilia. These terminal bronchioles then become respiratory bronchioles, which are considered to be the traditional passageways between the conducting and the gas exchange airways. Up to this point, the conducting airways contains about 150 ml of air in the tracheobronchial tree that does not participate in gaseous exchange. This is known as physiologic dead space. These respiratory bronchioles then lead into alveolar ducts and alveolar sacs and then alveoli. The oxygen and carbon dioxide exchange takes place in the alveoli. The lung is made up of about 300 million alveoli, which are arranged in clusters of 15 to 20. There are three types of alveolar cells: type 1, type 2 and type 3. Type 1 alveolar cells are epithelial cells that form the alveolar walls. Type 2 alveolar cells are metabolically active. These cells secrete surfactants, a phospholipid that lines the inner surface and prevents alveolar collapse. Type 3 alveolar cells or macrophages are large phagocytic cells that ingest foreign matters and act as an important defense mechanism. This way, the gaseous exchange takes place and the oxygenated blood is carried to the heart through the pulmonary veins. From there, the oxygenated blood is pumped to the different organs of the body. Whereas the waste gases that are produced during gaseous exchange are exhaled out into the external environment. Coming to the functions of the respiratory system. The primary function of the respiratory system is oxygenation of the tissues. For the tissue or cell to live, oxygen is required. And the respiratory system also removes carbon dioxide and the waste products from the metabolism. Some of the secondary functions are: the respiratory system facilitates sense of smell, and it also produces speech, and it also helps in maintaining acid-base balance. The respiratory system also helps in heat balance and also maintain body water levels. Let's end up this session with a good positive thought. Let our lungs live longer. Quit smoking. Help others to quit smoking. Avoid passive smoking for a healthy tomorrow. Thank you all. Hope this video is helpful to you. See you in the next session. Coming to the physiology of respiratory system. The